There's a woman you've probably noticed before. Maybe it was someone in your social circle. Maybe it was someone you watched from across the room at a dinner or a party, or just somewhere you were paying close attention. She wasn't the loudest person there. She wasn't performing. She wasn't doing anything that looked like effort. But something about her felt magnetic, not in the way that word gets overused, but literally, like she had a gravitational field, and the man she was with was almost visibly pulled toward her, present, attentive, offering her a kind of devotion that didn't look demanded or negotiated. It looked chosen. And you might have looked at her and felt something equal parts admiration and confusion, because you couldn't quite identify what she was doing to create that. The answer isn't what most people expect. It isn't a strategy she was running, or a personality type she was born with, or some untouchable quality that placed her outside the normal rules. It's something more specific than that, and more accessible. By the end of this video, you're going to understand the exact psychological and energetic reasons why some women inspire deep devotion from their man without trying. Not by doing more, but by becoming something that operates entirely beneath the level of strategy. Because if you've ever found yourself monitoring his responses, rehearsing what to say, checking your phone one more time, trying to figure out where you stand, this video is going to name something you've always sensed about devotion and how it actually forms. Let's start with something most people fundamentally misunderstand about devotion. Devotion isn't a decision. No man wakes up and consciously chooses to become devoted to a woman. Devotion is an emotional response, and like all emotional responses, it's produced below the threshold of conscious thought. It isn't manufactured by the right tactics. It isn't triggered by a certain number of hours between texts or the perfect level of mystery. At its core, devotion is triggered by how a man feels in a woman's presence, not what she looks like, not what she says, how he feels, the emotional atmosphere she generates simply by being who she is, and the women who inspire this kind of devotion without trying. They share a set of qualities that operate at a psychological and energetic level most people never examine. That's what we're going to examine right now. The first quality, and arguably the most foundational, is emotional self-sufficiency. And before I define it, let me tell you what it isn't. It isn't emotional coldness. It isn't performing indifference. It isn't pretending not to care. It means something much more specific. Her sense of internal stability is not contingent on his behaviour in any given moment. Think about how many times you've sent a message and then checked your phone 5 minutes later, 10 minutes later, opened the app, closed it, felt your entire mood shift slightly or dramatically based on whether he responded, how quickly, and what tone he used when he did, not because you chose to feel that way, but because somewhere, without realising it, you handed your emotional state to another person to manage. That's emotional outsourcing, and it's extraordinarily common. It doesn't mean you're weak or broken. It means you're human. But it is the single dynamic that most consistently disrupts attraction at its root, because the man on the other end of that dynamic feels it, not always consciously, but his nervous system registers it as weight, as responsibility, the unspoken signal beneath the checking and the monitoring. Your behaviour determines how I feel, and when a man feels responsible for a woman's emotional state, something shifts in him. He doesn't feel needed in a way that deepens devotion. He feels managed in a way that creates distance. This is one of the most important distinctions in the psychology of devotion. Men tend to become devoted when they feel three things: chosen, not needed; respected, not managed; free, not trapped. The emotionally self-sufficient woman creates exactly that environment, not as a tactic, but as a natural consequence of having her own internal foundation. She can be warm, open, fully present in a relationship, and still be the anchor of her own inner experience. That combination, genuine warmth without emotional dependency, is rare, and it creates something powerful, the experience of being with someone who doesn't need you to behave a certain way in order to be okay. That kind of freedom doesn't push a man away. It draws him in, because you cannot feel devoted to something that is already gripping you. Now here's where the psychology becomes biological, and where what we often call energy gets a more precise name. There's a concept in neuroscience called neuroception. It describes the nervous system's continuous unconscious process of scanning the environment for safety or threat. This happens automatically, below awareness, at a speed far faster than conscious thought. We are always reading each other's internal states through micro-expressions, vocal tone, body language, the pace of someone's breathing, and our nervous systems are responding before our minds have formed a single word about what we're sensing. You've experienced this. Think about walking into a room and immediately sensing that something was tense even before anyone said anything. Or think about a person in your life who, the moment you sit near them, you feel yourself exhale without knowing exactly why. That's neuroception. Your nervous system reading theirs. When a woman operates from a genuinely calm, regulated internal state, not suppressed, not performing composure, but actually grounded, the people around her feel it. Their own nervous systems settle in response. They feel safe, at ease. They feel, without knowing why, that they want to be near her. Many men operating entirely outside of conscious awareness associate this quality with something they can only describe as home, safety, rest, a kind of emotional peace they rarely find in other relationships. The woman who inspires devotion without trying is often someone whose nervous system doesn't leak outward as urgency or anxiety. She may feel things deeply, she often does. But she has cultivated a relationship with her own inner world that doesn't turn every feeling into a signal she sends outward, asking to be regulated from the outside. A man's nervous system responds to that the way a compass responds to magnetic north. It orients toward it. It stays close to it. Not as a decision, but as a biological pull toward the thing that feels like calm. Here's where the psychology starts to intersect with something more philosophical. We live in a culture that rewards effort. Work harder, optimize more, show up better, and that logic works well in many domains. But in the domain of attraction, it frequently inverts. Think about the last time you were on a date, or even just spending time with someone you liked, and you spent most of it inside your own head, monitoring how you were coming across, rehearsing what to say next, reading his expression to figure out what it meant, presenting a carefully considered version of yourself. You weren't really there. You were performing being there. And it's exhausting, because it is work. The constant management of perception, the calibration of what to reveal and when, the low hum of, am I doing this right? It drains something real. And the person across from you can feel the performance, even when they can't name it. Something feels slightly off, slightly curated, like they're being shown a presentation rather than meeting a person. Many women try to earn attraction through overgiving, through people-pleasing, through continuously proving their value. And the painful paradox is that all of that effort communicates the one thing that undermines it, that she isn't quite sure she's enough as she already is. Deep attraction, the kind that produces devotion, tends to form when someone is fully present rather than fully performing, because presence communicates confidence, self-worth, authenticity. When a woman is comfortable simply being herself, she allows the other person to experience her rather than evaluate her. And that shift alone changes the entire dynamic. There's one more layer to this that most people overlook, and it's the one that explains why devotion has an almost gravitational quality, why it feels less like a logical choice and more like a natural law. Across cultures, across spiritual traditions, across thousands of years of accumulated wisdom about human connection, one principle keeps appearing. The universe is organized around polarity, two complementary forces that are not in opposition, but in dynamic relationship, each one calling forth the other, each one completing what the other cannot be alone. In Taoism, this is Yin and Yang, the receptive and the active, the still water and the moving current, neither superior, neither static, always in relationship, always generating life through their contrast. Yin doesn't chase Yang. Its nature is to receive, to hold, to be, and it is precisely that quality that draws Yang toward it. In the Hindu and Tantric traditions, this same principle is embodied in Shakti and Shiva. Shakti is the divine feminine, pure creative energy, alive, flowing, dynamic. Shiva is pure consciousness, still, witnessing, directional. In Tantric philosophy, it is Shakti's aliveness, her radiance, her depth of presence that awakens Shiva from stillness. She doesn't ask for his devotion. Her nature calls it out of him, not as a strategy, as a law. Modern psychology has arrived at the same principle through a different door. When a woman embodies emotional steadiness alongside genuine warmth, receptivity alongside self-respect, a groundedness in herself that doesn't require the relationship to define her, something activates in the man she's with, a protective instinct, an investing instinct, an orientation toward her that he didn't consciously choose but can't seem to override. This is polarity at work, and it cannot be performed or manufactured, because the moment it becomes a tactic, it collapses into its opposite, effortful, grasping, tense. Real polarity lives in a woman who has returned to herself so fully that her energy simply is what it is: warm, receptive, grounded, whole. The kind of presence that devotion flows toward, not because she asked, but because that is the law. We talked about yin in Taoism, how its very nature, receptive and complete in itself, is what draws yang toward it without effort. Within that same tradition, there's a principle that describes what that actually looks like in a person's lived experience, not as an archetype, as a practice. It's called Wu Wei, often translated as non-doing, but the more precise meaning is action in complete alignment with one's nature, effortless effort, not the absence of movement, but movement so natural it requires no force. You've experienced the opposite. Think about the last time you tried to fall asleep. The harder you tried, the more awake you were. The moment you stopped trying, sleep arrived on its own. The strive in itself was the obstacle. The same principle operates in attraction. The woman who is trying hardest to be magnetic, strategizing, calculating, engineering how she comes across, is generating friction. An effortful quality that, even when invisible, creates subtle resistance in the other person. The woman who is most magnetic has usually stopped trying to attract and started simply being. Her presence is uncontrived, her interest is real, her ease isn't performed. It's the natural result of a woman who has built a relationship with herself that doesn't require his validation to feel solid. That is Wu Wei in the relational world. A foundation that lives inside her rather than in his reaction or his choice. From that foundation, she can love fully, engage openly, be warm and completely present, without any of it being a strategy to secure an outcome. And that is the energy that produces devotion. Not because it's a tactic, but because it signals something people are biologically wired to move toward: inner completeness. So here's what I want you to sit with, because this is the part most content in this space gets wrong. The women who seem to create devotion without trying didn't stumble into it. What you're witnessing in them isn't luck or personality or some quality they were born with. It's the result of something most people never undertake, a genuine reckoning with identity, with self-concept, with what femininity actually means, not as a performance, not as a set of behaviours, but as an energy, a way of being in the world. Most women in the modern world were never given access to that understanding. We were handed external definitions of femininity, softness as weakness, nurturing as self-sacrifice, beauty as the primary currency, without ever being shown the deeper truth. That feminine energy is not a role to perform. It is a force, receptive, magnetic, alive. And when a woman truly understands this, not as an idea but as something she has integrated into her identity, her self-concept, her nervous system, everything in her relational world shifts. That's the real work. Not strategies, not rules, identity. Understanding who you are beneath the conditioning. Rebuilding your self-concept from the inside out. Learning to inhabit your femininity as a strength rather than a liability. The devotion these women inspire isn't a reward they receive for good behaviour. It's a natural consequence of who they have become, and who you become. That's something you can work on, starting now. Everything in this video circles the same question. The question this channel is built around. Why do relationships work the way they do? From the feminine perspective. Not with tips. Not as a dating coach. but as a philosophical and psychological exploration of the laws that govern love, polarity, and feminine nature. Psychology, spirituality, identity, self-concept, the universal principles that underpin them all, examined through one lens. What it means to be a self-aware woman who understands herself deeply enough that relationships stop being a mystery. That's Law of Her. If this resonates, subscribe and come along. Every video is another layer down.